Ladies and gentlemen, if you've played Watcher of Realms for any length of time, one of the things that you're going to learn very quickly, or with any gacha game for that matter, is that you have a constant onslaught of new heroes, new champions, new characters that you can unlock and use that are just coming at you fast and hard. Well, I think sometimes it's nice to go back and take a look at some of the older units, some of the older heroes, and see if they're worth investing in, if they're worth using, and certainly how they hold up in today's meta. So that's exactly what we're doing today. We're going to be talking about Kineza. Now, Kineza is a bit of an interesting unit because on paper, her kit looks pretty good. In practice, we're about to find out, but on YouTube, for example, I haven't seen really any videos on her in the last year since she was introduced. She's definitely one of the older units in the game, especially when it comes to fighters, and she does have a bond skill with Salazar. Now, she is part of the Nightmare Council, and we all know how ridiculously OP Nightmare fighters usually are, so it's going to be very interesting to see if she kind of falls into that category as well. Obviously, everybody gets Wrath that you can use as a Lord for this faction, but you do also have Rygar, and you have Torador as well. And then some potential pairings with her, you do have some very, very good other potential units. You have Moradin, you have Hatsut, Yuri, Abomination was a fusion for quite some time. Obviously, you have Salazar, you have Kagiri, you have Sun Wukong, Twyla, you have Valeria. There's lots of good options that could be run alongside her. Even for the epics, you have, your Barons and your Gluttonies and your Demos and all that, right? So it's a very, very strong faction. So let's go ahead, take a look at her and see what she's all about. First of all, she's 14 cost, which is very low cost as far as fighters go. One of the lowest costs in the game for a fighter, in all honesty. The only exception being somebody like a Kane, I think his name is, who we just had released recently. So obviously, right, Kane, he's a 12 cost fighter, but 14 is definitely on that lower end, right? Usually for fighters, we're seeing anywhere between about 17 to 20, so, something to consider there. Now, for skills, with her basic attack, it is a physical attack. So she does physical damage, deals 52% damage to one enemy 2 times. I do not have her fully booked. As you can see, I am not using skill crystals on her, unless this testing unveils that she's absolutely insane, right? So a very basic attack. Now with full books, this will go to 120% damage total, so she's going to be on par with your Sun Wukongs and your Kagiris in terms of the basic attack. With the talent, basic attack has a 25% chance of gaining 1 chi stack. What does this do? Well, the flowing life source that can enhance some skill effects and stack up to 3 times. Upon reaching the maximum number of stacks, gaining this effect instead will regenerate 50 rage. So she's going to have a 25% chance on every basic attack to gain chi. When she reaches 3 stacks of chi, every time that 25% chance procs, she's going to restore 50 rage instead, which is pretty cool. Triggering dodge also has a 100% chance of gaining 1 chi stack. So she does have dodge in her kit. She's one of the only heroes inside the game that actually has this dodge mechanic as part of their kit, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and talk through it. So Zen Evasion originally has a 12% chance of dodge. This is obviously booked up a little bit, so it's initially a 10% chance. Every 100 attack speed provides an extra 4% chance of dodge. So right now with baseline, she's going to be at 16% total, right? And then as we get an extra 100 attack speed on there, she's going to gain 4% incrementally. Obviously, you can get this booked out even more, which is pretty cool, and it's going to really enhance her kit, right? So if you do have skill crystals on her, you're going to notice a big difference from that. We're going to talk about the awakenings in a little bit as well. Chi Shatter enhances the next basic attack upon triggering dodge, making it deal 200% damage 1 time. Each stack of Chi makes basic attack and enhanced basic attack ignore 12% defense. So again, keep in mind she can have up to 3 stacks of this stuff, so it's going to ignore 36% of defense. Obviously, this will book out as well, so she's going to be well over 40% ignore defense on her basic and enhanced basic attacks when she has chi stacks, right? Which is very, very cool. Now, her passive bond skill obtains Salazar. Salazar is a permanent fusion as of right now, so you can go ahead and obtain him pretty easy. To unlock the following bonus effect, the damage that Surging Roar deals by consuming a stack of chi increases by 120%. So that's her ultimate. Let's go ahead and take a look at her ultimate now, which is pretty cool. So consumes all chi, with each stack dealing 125% damage to enemies in range 1 time. Afterward, deals an additional 400% damage 1 time. So Obviously, with this booked up, she's going to have a 500% burst damage. Her skill cost is lowered, so it's a 500 cost ultimate, which is very, very good. And then she's going to have a 145% bonus damage each time. So as it stands right now, she can get a maximum of 375% damage to enemies in range. Then she's going to get that 400% damage burst on top. That's considering she has full stacks, 3 stacks of chi. So that's her kit, right? It's like... It's a bit of a weird in-between because, again, it's pretty basic, but there's a lot to it at the same time. It's a weird combination, and on paper, like I say, she should be pretty good. So let's go ahead and take a look at her awakenings. I do have her A3. This is simply just because I have pulled duplicate copies of her. I was certainly not trying to get her A3, but it is what it is. A1. Each stack of chi restores 3% HP per second, so when she's at max stacks, that's going to be a 9% HP per second, which means she will have very good self-sustain. Crit damage plus 15% on the A2. A3, Surging Roar deals 100% increased damage of the final strike and inflicts stun, so she can bring stun for something like Semra as well. Rage regen attack plus 2 on the A4, and an A5 for every stack of chi consumed increases attack speed by 100 after casting Surging Roar, lasting for 10 seconds. So I'm going to be honest, people. This Awakening tree is pretty shit, right? I mentioned she's one of the oldest heroes in the game, and you can definitely see that with the Awakenings. These Awakenings are nothing to write home about. We'd much rather have, like, increased attack on the A2, and we'd much rather have, like, penetration on the A4, and that's what we do see with modern fighters, but unfortunately, she came out far before that meta. Now, I do have her Inside Shattered Hilt, which is going to increase the single target damage by 20%. For every 5 instances of damage dealt, increases the single target damage by an extra 1%, stacking up to 10 times. So we can get a total of 30% single target damage increase over time with her on the battlefield. She does have a very nice exclusive where there's a 50% chance of gaining 1 extra stack of chi after triggering a dodge, so you can potentially get 2 instead of 1. Upon gaining chi, she increases single target damage by 15% for 8 seconds, so that's pretty cool. Now, in terms of her gear, here's how we're going to be building her. So we're actually just going to go ahead and throw our Sun Wukong gear on her, since it's some of the best gear that I have on my account for a fighter. So this is going to bring her to total stats of 23, almost 24k attack, so almost right in half there, so 23,498. She's going to have a lot of attack speed at 321, which is going to bring her down to a nice 1.4 second increment. And then she's going to have 112 and then 310 as the crit rate and crit damage respectively, with 61.5% rage regen as well. So she's going to have very decent rage regen. She's going to have very decent attack, certainly very decent crit damage and everything like that as well. So I'm super excited to test her out and see how this goes. Now, we will also be going through and reviewing her after the testing so that you guys can get an idea on that front. So we're going to go into Drake's Chasm, Nightmare 4. Some people got on my case in the past for saying, like, hey, you know, why are you testing them out inside Drake's Chasm? You know, there's more late game content that you could be using, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff, right? And the simple answer for that is Drake's Chasm is a consistent content that we've had since like the start of the game, so it's a very controlled environment where you can really test heroes and just see how they perform versus each other, whereas in, you know, Semra or something like that, there's a lot more RNG to it, a lot more moving parts, and we're really here testing Kineza, so I don't want to you know, end up really just doing a showcase of some of the other heroes inside my Semra teams or something like that. So we're going to go ahead and throw in Moradin as kind of like a little comparison for damage. Now, Moradin is baseline. Obviously, our Kineza is A3, so it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that goes. Now, here's the thing to consider as well. So she does already have 3 stacks of chi, which is pretty cool, right? So she stacks them up very, very quickly, but she does have an auto ultimate, so you do not get to control when her ultimate goes off. It is going to pop as soon as she has available, which is good but also bad, because keep in mind when she pops her ultimate, she is going to go ahead and use those stacks of chi as well, so she is potentially going to have that affect her, you know, damage output. Obviously the chi does bring her HP regen as well, as you've seen there, so it brings her like 9% of her overall HP in total, which gets consumed every time she ultimates. Now, that being said, when she ultimates, she can obviously do very, very decent damage. Her burst damage potential is not quite as high as somebody like a Sun Wukong or something like that, though, so We're going to go ahead and take out Morden. You can see she's doing 76k. Now she does 328 with a follow-up of about 600k on her ultimate. So those were the initial bursts of the chi being consumed, and then the big 600k was the result of her final strike, essentially. So we're going to go ahead and restart this and just run this again. I'm going to put Morden in here, and I'm going to start popping his ultimate as soon as it's available. So I'm going to place her down first. She's obviously going to get the Wings of Grace from my Diao-chan. Morden's going to go in, and he's going to get the inspiration from my Airless. So something like this. And then, like I mentioned, I'm just going to pop his ultimates as soon as possible so you guys can get kind of like a good idea of how their damage compares. Now, obviously, I understand that Morden is a tactician. He's going to bring a lot more to the table than she does, but it's just kind of a little comparison of how these different fighters will pair up, right? And again, keep in mind, he's base level promo. She's Awakened 3, so something to consider there too. Now, what's really nice, though, is the fact that once she has full stacks of chi, she does start to restore her rage a little bit more. It means that you don't necessarily have to rely on somebody like an Airless or an Eloin quite as much as you may have to with some sort of other heroes that you're using. Now, we'd also see, obviously, that our Morden is doing quite a significantly higher amount of damage than she is. And he does also almost have his ultimate available again because of our Airless. So Airless is helping out a lot there with the rage regen. That being said, she is also going to have like the weakens and everything up now that she gets to play. So that's like 800k on her final strike, which is very, very good. But keep in mind, so her overall damage, right, on her ultimate, her big burst is going to work out to about 1,000% damage, which sounds pretty good. Because with her chi consumption as well as her final strike of 500% once she's fully booked out, she's going to do that big burst of about 1,000% damage on her multiplier. But then you consider that somebody like a Sun Wukong is coming in with an 1,800% damage multiplier on his ultimate, and then a 3,600% damage multiplier on his ultimate when he's A5, right? So something to consider there as well. Her awakenings certainly are not as powerful, but as you can see, it is also pretty cool that we do actually have the dodges that are coming in here and there. So you can see every so often it procs and it says miss, so that's actually her dodging whatever effects the boss is trying to throw at us, which is very cool. And she actually does a pretty nice big burst there to him. We're going to go ahead and pop our Morden here and see if we can get through the shield. We have been doing good so far with the shields. And again, I understand this is not the most late game content. This may not be the most applicable content for everybody playing the game. But I really just want to keep it to a nice controlled environment where I can fairly test these heroes against each other. So she does have her ultimate here. Big burst. So we did hit over 1 million there, which is pretty cool. So obviously her chi consumption combined with... I'm not sure, actually. Like, she may have just had more chi when she did it, but I'm not sure why she had such a big damage differential there. That being said, though, very, very decent damage. So she's doing similar damage to an A0 Morden. So again, 37 million versus the 45 million. To make it a little bit more interesting, I think we'll bring in a couple of other fighters to test her with as well, just to see how she does compared to them in terms of damage. So we'll bring in... Obviously, she has my Sun Wukong's gear, so I can't necessarily bring him in for that. But we'll bring in like a baseline promo Twyla to test. And then we'll bring in one more fighter as well. So I do have an A5 Arrogance that we'll go ahead and bring in to test. So it'll be quite interesting to see who wins this damage testing. I think Arrogance is probably going to come out on top if I were to guess. We're going to place her first, though, so she gets the Wings of Grace. And then we're going to go ahead and place Airless so that nobody else gets the inspirations, and we'll do that. And we'll see how it goes. Now, Arrogance I placed in a spot where he's not going to get heals from the boss, so that'll be quite interesting. He does also have an auto ultimate, so we're going to go ahead and just kind of let him do his thing there. I don't think he has heals on his ultimate either. He does have a little bit, actually, so he should be fine to stay alive. So let's do that. Kineza goes ahead and pops her ultimate automatically, obviously. We should have more than enough damage to get through. And Arrogance, actually, in his current position, is not going to get Diao-chan inspiration either. So I really shit the bed with the placement of him. But that being said, out of everybody here so far, Kineza is unfortunately trailing. She's bringing up the rear guard. She does pop her ultimate again. which brings her to the top, right? So she's now done the most damage out of anybody, temporarily at least. I'm sure once Twyla and once Arrogance pop their ultimates again, that's going to change pretty quickly. Twyla is very much like RNG dependent though, of course, right? So it depends on how many times her deranged blade triggers, whereas Kineza just more so has that straight up damage. So out of everybody here, she's actually doing pretty damn good, right? Like it's very close. So Twyla is A1, which I think it's more impressive that she's doing that much damage at A1, and she has a pretty poopy build as well, with like an attack speed on the right-hand side instead of attack percentage as you'd want to see for a late-game build. But Kineza is actually doing very comparable damage to an A5 Arrogance, which says a lot. Like, that's very good damage, to be honest. Right, like that's actually impressive, the level of damage that she's doing. So we'll go ahead, we'll wait for Arrogance to finish his ultimate, and then we'll wait for Kineza to pop her ultimate one more time. Again, keep in mind, Arrogance does not have Diao-Chan inspiration, so if you put Arrogance with inside Diao-Chan range, the results would probably be a bit more skewed, but still very close, right? Within like 1 million damage pretty much at all times, which is impressive. I was not expecting that, if I'm being completely honest. Really goes to show you that Arrogance might need a bit of a rework. He used to be pretty crazy, now he's just kind of you know, he exists, he's okay, but he's certainly not as good as he used to be. So let's go ahead and end the fight here. Kineza actually comes out on top by around 1 million. She did just pop her ultimate, but that's pretty cool. So I'll go ahead and show you that here. Take a look at that. So very good. Actually, Arrogance came out just on top, so it switched after I ended it, but it is what it is. Now, the other thing I'm curious about with her is, let's go ahead and test her in the single target arena. When she initially came out, I cannot talk apparently. Give me 1 second here. There we go. So when she initially came out, she did actually get quite a bit of use inside the single target arena, just because of her big potential burst damage, as well as the fact that she could essentially stop people from getting through while also having the chance to dodge, right? So she had the chance to essentially keep herself alive. This was really prevalent when we had the meta where we could deploy our fighters right as soon as the enemies came out, right? So you'd place your Kineza there first. She'd be kind of like your pseudo tank, as well as somebody who just soak up that damage, right? So super cool strategies back in the day. If you just started playing the game recently, you probably won't even know what I'm talking about, but it was kind of the meta back in the day. So we're going to do a 426k BP team here and just see what she's able to do in the single target arena. Again, super low cost unit, so I'm super interested to see how she can do, you know, in terms of holding off the enemies. For the single target arena, a lot of times we do see somebody like a Kagiri being the tank, so it'll be interesting to see if Kineza could take that instead. Now, she does get a dodge there right off the hop, so she does stack up her chi, and it's very nice. So here's something to mention as well. Obviously, inside Raid Shadow Legends, you oftentimes have heroes with abilities that are stacking up like this, but there's no way to really see it happening, right? So here we go. There's the ultimate, 183,000 times 3. We didn't even get to see the final strike there because she just killed the enemy, which is pretty cool. So as I was saying, though, a lot of times heroes or champions have stuff like this that stacks up, but you don't really have an indicator for it. You don't know what their stacking is at, those sorts of things. Watcher of Realms does a fantastic job where she has the little chi balls circling around her. You can see exactly how many she's at, which is pretty nice. So we're going to go ahead and hopefully just, there we go. We're going to kill this guy before her ultimate pops. And then as soon as the next guy comes out, I'm just curious how quickly she can take him out with the usage of the ultimate before I place my Moradin. So boom, there we go. Oh boy. Certainly not the best. I think we can see why she's not necessarily being used inside the single target arena anymore. Her ultimate at A3 with pretty damn good gear, like basically best on my account, took the enemy down to about half HP, right? Let's hit a Moradin ult. Boom. It, again, did like half HP, but then again, he's going to place the weakens and everything on them too. So she's definitely not the best when it comes to doing burst damage. Like, let's see what she can do when the next enemy comes in here. I do like that she has like the auto ultimate for usage like this though, right? Although it does make her harder to control a little bit. So yeah, we get to about half HP. Really just not the kind of damage we'd be looking for, certainly. Like, again, you see your Sithras, you see your Sun Wukongs, your Kagiris, your really meta arena units, and they're doing significantly more burst damage. Now, she does have a very low-cost ultimate, right? So she can cycle through this ultimate pretty quickly. As you can see, we do have Airless here doing the rage regen for everybody, but she's still cycling incredibly quick. So that is kind of a bonus to Kineza. Sure, her ultimate may not do the most damage in single target arena, but she does cycle it very, very quickly. So you can see that she's getting like 2 ultimates for every 1 that Moradin's getting, which is pretty cool. She does have those dodges that can come through. The Chi is also activating and making it so that she can heal herself. So she has a lot of sustain, which allowed us to wait a while before putting our Airless out there as well, which is pretty cool. But yeah, just really not that special. Her range as well kind of hits her in a negative way. Like, if she had more tiles in front of her, I think it would be a good thing, because then she could be placed behind like a Torador or something like that. But as it stands, she essentially has to be the tank. No questions about it, which really kind of narrow her use cases as well, because I imagine we're going to start struggling more with these guys coming out now and how much damage they do. I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong, but, you know, she is pretty squishy. She is a fighter at the end of the day. She's not really, you know, meant to survive like this, and she doesn't really have the level of damage mitigation that somebody like a Kagiri has, so that's something to consider as well. She does get a lucky dodge there, which is nice, though. So now she does go ahead and pop her ultimate, but yeah, I think we're about to see her go down here, unless she gets some really lucky dodges. Though, that being said, Moradin and her together actually do manage to take out the enemies that are coming through, so perhaps she'll survive this wave. It's certainly not going to be an arena meta, that's for sure. You're certainly not going to be pushing, you know, Toppa Overlord with this strategy by any means. She's a little bit slow for that, but, you know, we're getting through the waves. It's okay. We'll go ahead and take a look at the damage numbers as well. Her versus Moradin. Moradin obviously placed quite significantly later, but as you can see, Moradin is also doing more damage. And again, keep in mind, this is an A0 Moradin. Now, of course, he is a tactician. He has some very good gear, all that sort of good stuff, but really, at the end of the day, an A3 hero should be beating out an A1 hero in like 99% of cases, in my opinion. So that's kind of the showcase on Kineza. Let's go ahead and take a look at her ratings, right? Let's give her some ratings for where she could be used. Now, I'm going to be quite generous with these ratings, because I want to consider everything for, you know, mid-game players, early-game players, late-game players, all that sort of good stuff. After I give the ratings, I'll go ahead and walk through her kit again real quick and just show you guys the builds that you would want to use for, you know, gear pieces and stuff like that, because I forgot to mention that earlier. But yeah, so this is for, like, you know, all levels of content, right? So it's not just late game, because obviously late game you're just strictly not going to use her. She's been A3 on my account forever, and I haven't used her, right? This is the first time making a video on her. But Drake's Chasm, I am going to give her a 5. Her burst damage can help out a lot with getting through those shields. It can help out a lot, potentially, in Abyss with having those Chi mechanics where she could potentially avoid the slams and help you out with a little bit of RNG there. Faction Trial, very much the same thing. You're going to need a lot of, like, kind of RNG like that later on. She can help you out potentially with the floating orbs that come down. She can, you know, maybe dodge those, which would be pretty cool. Single target DPS arena, I'm going to go ahead and give her a 4. Again, I think she's serviceable. She's low cost. She has the auto ultimate that can go off, and certainly in the earlier levels of arena, unless you're going against like a very strong Sun Wukong team or something like that, she could certainly help out. Artifact Material Rage, she's going to get a 4. She'll be serviceable there. Void Rift, kind of same thing. Guild Wars, probably going to be a 3. She's not particularly high scaling for BP, and she's also not particularly good. So you wouldn't necessarily see her like, this is kind of a thing that holds her back, right? Because again, if she had like longer range on her basic attack and her ultimate, she could then be placed behind the Torador, where you could see her run in some of those Nightmare comps or something like that, similar to Sun Wukong. But the fact that she can't be placed behind means that she's not really useful for Guild War. Immortal Codex, I'm going to go ahead and give her a 4. Titanic Runes, I'm going to give her a 5, because she can bring stunnage. She can bring damage, right, to help you get through certain waves. And then the dodges could be very useful, especially for newer players trying to, you know, dodge poisons or dodge big saw phase slam, those sorts of things. And her extra stun will really help you to control things as well for the saw phase stage, at least. Gear Raid 2, I'm going to go ahead and give her a 4. Gear Dungeon 1, going to give her a 4. Gear Dungeon 2, also a 4. I think these ratings are fairly accurate. XP Raid, she's probably going to be about a 4. Tide, she's going to be a 4. XP raid, I meant a 3, by the way. Same thing for gold raid. I kind of talk about this all the time, but for, you know, XP and gold raid, they either have to be really, really strong single target damage dealers, or they have to be doing AoE damage, because if they're just a mediocre single target damage dealer, they're going to take way too long to get through the mobs that come out, and then you're just not really going to be able to progress, right? Malarix, I'm going to give her a 4. She could be very useful. Gear raid 1, she's going to be like a 1, not very useful. Tower of Deception, probably a 3. She's serviceable, but you wouldn't want to use her. AoE Arena, a 1. Gear raid 3, a 1, and then Arena Anti-Air is a 1. I don't know why people are rating her as high as a 3, right? It's kind of crazy, but it is what it is. So those are the ratings. In terms of the gear, on the right-hand side, Soulbound Arcana is going to be a very solid way to go for her. Infernal Roar would probably work as well, though you're just boosting her basic attacks, right? So not really her ultimate or anything like that. Cataclysm and Ageless Wrath will be very solid as well, and then you could also get away with some Hell's Lament if you wanted. So increasing damage by 35% and crit damage by 50% for 20 seconds when you trigger her ultimate. Left hand side, Wicked Vengeance is probably going to be best in slot. You could also use Warlord, Calamity, Annihilating Might, Whirlwind, you know, same kind of thing that we see on really any sort of DPS character inside Watcher of Realms. But that being said, let me know where you guys use Kineza, and if you use her. Let me know who else you have on your account that's getting snubbed instead of her, if you do happen to use her in 2025. Late 2025 at that, ladies and gentlemen. We're like almost halfway through November already. Time is flying. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I'll see you next time.